TOA community, welcome back to the channel, everybody. Robert Linkle with trainingtheolderadult.com. Today I want to talk about this article in the Wall Street Journal sent by one of our affiliates. Colleen, thank you. Thank you for sending this over. Very cool article that looks at the Houston Astros. This is their strength and conditioning staff that have written this article and put together some little videos on how to do it all. So I want to show you that. Let me drop into this too, so you can see like some of the ones that we're going to describe and talk about. He has video visuals of these, so as you scroll through the article you can listen to it. You can also read each piece as it goes through, but like with this first one, the goblet squat, they have a video, as you can see there, of how to perform the squat and all the way down. So if you want more details on how to perform each one of these, feel free to check that out. This is a pretty cool article, and the reason that I want to share it here, well, I won't jump the shark. Let's go ahead and dive into it. Okay, 6 strength exercises that fueled the World Series champions, right? So it talks about the strength coaches here when they look at the basic components of what they do as athletes. They're running, moving laterally, moving forward, rotation, swinging the bat, concentrics, eccentrics, accelerations, decelerations, a lot of things that you can look at in the world of regular everyday movements, but also aging bodies that are staying athletic. So if we're golfing, if we're playing tennis, if we're swimming, if we're doing any of these other activities, all the way down to the simplicities of gardening, which I've had more clients suffer injuries via gardening than any other sport or any other activity. I think the most devastating injured sport that we have is skiing. Unfortunately, I know a lot of people out there love to ski, but damn if we don't have a lot of clients who have hurt themselves, damaged their knees, damaged their back, had concussions, etc. Skiing's rough. So anyhow, stick with the safe stuff where you just get to hit a plastic ball back and forth to each other in pickleball. Don't have to worry about any head contacts there necessarily. Okay, exercise number 1, goblet squat. Right away, they talk about when you do a back squat with a barbell across the upper back, transferring the weight from the front of the body can reduce the compression on the spinal column. I love it. We look at Mike Boyle, who I believe this was like early 2000s, somewhere in there. Don't quote me exactly, but he put out an article and wrote about the death of the back squat and how the back squat was not necessary for athletes to perform anymore. And that specifically, well, not often or not regularly. And is there a huge benefit of the back squat in its transferability of power and strength development to sport? And so he's like, look, I work with hockey players. Number 1 is kind of his area of expertise. Rarely do they stand with both feet right underneath them and push up. And I get it that you're using this piece of equipment to help develop general strength and power production in a linear fashion, right? And you're vertically driving, and that can be transitioned into other athletic movements. But rarely are you ever in that bilateral stance with a load on your back pressing up. In hockey, you just don't do that at all. Really, the only sport that you do that is in the sport of powerlifting. So we can use this as a tool, but is there a more efficient or a more practical tool rather than loading the spine? That's where transitioning the weight to the front gives you more core activation and gives you more upper body engagement in a way as well, but also reduces a lot of that vertical compression direct on the spine, places it basically on how much strength can your core, how much weight can your core hold rather than how much can I spinal load, which is probably 4 or 5 times more on your back than you can put on your front. So Boyle's suggestion is my athletes are in split stance or single leg supports a lot, right? So why would I not do heavy loaded split squats or Bulgarians or single leg pistol squats, etc.? And then that kind of created this big division in the world of do you back squat or do you not? And the rest is history. Mike Boyle, really, that's probably the first thing he did that put like a huge, I would say, target on his back a little bit, but also made him a household name in the world of strength and conditioning. I love that philosophy and that way of thinking, because I too look at this and go, and the best example he gives is if you can squat all the way down to a chair, unload, and then stand back up with both feet bilateral, because you can do that, does that mean that you can do a split squat with each leg? And the answer is no. But if you can do a split squat all the way down, touch your right knee to the floor, switch, put all the way down, touch your left knee to the floor. If you can do a split squat to parallel on each side, does that guarantee that you can do a bilateral squat all the way down and back? Pretty much it does. Showing us that there's more athleticism and more functional gain by performing these split squats that will allow you to be better at a sit to stand via just training sit to stands all the time and then saying, well, can I now do a split squat because I'm good at sit to stands? See what I'm saying? So the practicality of this, splitting the feet, definitely makes us more transferable strength that we can use in daily locomotion and walking, but also long, big gait steps, carrying loads up and down off the floor, up and down stairs, descending, ascending, etc. Okay? So keep that in mind. Goblet squat, I love it. Great application, great idea. The curtsy lunge. This is the one I was showing in the video where he was crossing 1 foot behind in return. Warning here for those with hip replacements, don't do these or don't do them very often. You are crossing the midline, you're sitting into deep flexion, and in some cases you're twisting a little bit. Those are 3 big no-nos that we don't want to do. Anterior approach, posterior lateral approach, it doesn't really matter. In my opinion, this should not be a regular practice exercise. I can demo a couple of them, but this is not something I can do on a regular basis. I don't encourage anybody with hip replacements to do this either. Your regular drop step lunge or an inline drop step lunge is great, but that deep cross, you can even cross the midline just a little bit, but it's that deep cross where you're like sitting into a bowing position, like you're at the ballet and they just finish and they throw that leg behind and do the big curtsy. That's such a tough position on the hip. And if you don't have a labrum and you don't have, security in that joint of natural musculature, then I think you're rolling the dice a little bit and messing with that. So I would advise not. But everybody else, healthy hips, healthy back, healthy knees, alignment for this is great. And the abduction strength of glute medius minimus, I just did a webinar on this and talked about developing glutes 2 and 3. Basically, glute max, your big glute. If you grab your butt cheek, that's your glute max on the outside. And then medius and minimus, 2 and 3, are kind of along the side, just off the side a little bit. Those two are pretty underdeveloped. The glute max does the majority of the work. So abducting, pulling your leg out to the side, or sitting deep into that curtsy lunge really targets those, along with your TFL, your tensor fascia lata. Sounds like a coffee drink, TFL, tensor fascia lata. Targets that and encourages that lateral hip stability. So I think that's a great one for baseball players. Fantastic, because they're cutting and rounding bases and lateral slide and diving for baseballs and etc. Okay, I am obviously no baseball player, but you get it. All right. Also, did you notice, let me go back. Did you notice the component? So lower body push, cool, right? Lower body, or curtsy, still a lower body push, okay? And now we're gonna get into lower body pulls. So we're using strength and conditioning terminologies here. I love it, but also notice we use that with TOA, with training older adults. We use it with youth, right? We have Kid Strong here in California, right? I think that's a franchise that's kind of moving its way across America right now. My guy at Method 3, John, he's owner here in Folsom and in Rockland. I think there's 2 Kid Strongs. They use same terminology like this: upper body push and pulls and lateral stability. I mean, it's very, very cool. It's neat to see strength and conditioning terminology finding its way around all realms of fitness. You're talking about these components in which we work, in which we lift from. Okay, lower body pulls. Hamstring bridge walkouts. We do these all the time. We call them reverse inchworms. So you bridge up and then you walk your feet out and you walk your feet back, but your butt's up the whole time. So think of that like an inchworm, right? Where you walk your hands out and you walk your hands back up, or you do hands, feet, hands, feet, hands, feet. So you like inchworm away. It's basically the reverse of that, the back side of the body. So you walk your feet up, you walk your feet out, you walk your feet up, you walk your feet out. It lights up your hammies. And if you really want to make that super challenging, go on a wood floor or laminate and put a towel underneath each foot. So when you're doing it, your feet want to slip and slide. Oh, dude. So we'll like inchworm up, inchworm out, and then hamstring curl. Inchworm up, inchworm out, hamstring curl. We'll kind of complex it. So hard. But this is a great one. I love anything posterior chain, especially lower body hinging actions like this. A foot elevated bridge, inverted planks where you just put your heels on a box and your shoulders on the floor, and then you bridge up, straight leg bridge and hold it. Keep a little bend in your knees, but just that isometric hold. This is definitely a more athletic version of that, but boy, does it get the backside of the body. So I love that. Single leg Romanian deadlifts, single leg RDLs, and or kickstands, rear leg elevated kickstands. All of these either short split stance, elevated or completely off the floor, single leg supported, hinging, pulling actions. So vital. This is our, let's tee up the golf ball, let's pick up the pencil we just dropped kind of movement pattern that You're going to address getting something up and down off the ground. But remember, we're going to do that over and over and over again. So we want to make sure we're in good mechanics of doing this on a regular basis, and we're not going to end up, damaging or hurting our back or our hips because we're improperly picking things up. Even light little things like paper and pencils. As I've said many times before, I've thrown my back out and damaged myself picking up throw pillows, picking up the bounce, detergent sheets, the fabric softener sheets, picking up a compass that my daughter dropped behind the couch. It's these hinged, reaching, exposed, typically ipsilateral positions that tend to damage us. So keep that in mind, especially the ipsilateral approach. Keep that in mind when you're doing your single leg RDLs. If my left leg is going to go up and I hold the weight in my right hand, that's a contralateral approach, right? But if I hold it in my right hand as my left leg goes up behind me, that's a ipsilateral. I'm reaching behind the couch or reaching behind the washing machine to get the socks that fell there. That's that exposed position that people tend to hurt themselves in. So load from here, rear leg elevate as high as you can, and return and practice training your positioned body for those exposed positions. Because when they come up in real life now, we're ready for them. I'm not saying you need to reach a weight out in front of you. I was just demoing by putting my arm out, but you would load and keep that weight close. And at least your back would be used to the idea of an ipsilateral load in a hinge, and it's going to have to stress to hold on to that weight. And then it's going to want to twist and it's going to want to turn to kind of help balance and coordinate. That's where all those like internal rotation, corkscrew the body frame down straight to really maximize that high hamstring is going to come in, okay? This is a technique, this could be a video all on its own, is the progression to a single leg RDL. Because you have your bridge, you have a crossed figure 4 bridge, you have a single leg bridge, then you have a RDL hinge, right? Regular RDL standing, up to a good morning, so transitioning the weight to a further fulcrum point. Then you're going to do a kickstand, you're going to do an elevated kickstand, you're going to do a rear foot elevated on the wall kickstand, and then you're eventually going to do a supported single leg RDL and then an RDL, okay, single leg RDL. That, 8 to 10 exercises, whatever that was, that's a progression in itself. But as soon as you see this, people go, well, I'm just going to go try that one. They don't know the laddered steps to get to that. That's a difficult lift. So number one, don't just throw people into that. You got to progress them. At least start with just a regular RDL, both feet, and then kickstand, and then elevated, and then wall elevated, and then to the full one with support, etc. Okay? All right, plyometrics. So this is the one on the whole list that when I look at for older pops, this is the one where I give like heavy caution. I love dynamic, explosive, power-based movements for older adults. I think power training is super valuable. I think we've gone through enough research. I have another video coming up here in just a moment where we're going to talk about how important power training and how it really is the number one. I mentioned in my last video as well. Power training is the number one thing that older adults should be doing. But once they have developed a base, at least 8 weeks, if not more, I prefer like 4 to 6 months of training before they start to get really dynamic and explosive. But how do we do it with the aging body? Instead of them leaving the ground, we teach them to propel and throw implements. So they're still getting this explosive power-based release, but they don't leave the ground and have the risk factor of impacts on the floor. Now, pop squats, drop squats, little dynamics where we're moving our feet an inch or two off the ground, all that's great. But 12-inch box jumps or depth jumps or frog jumps or bounds or skips, with aging bodies, I'm talking, 60 to 65 up if I have to put a number on it, deconditioned, undertrained, undermuscled, bad idea. I mean, big risk factor, huge. So that's something that's like, what's risk versus reward here to make people be able to do vertical jumps or rocket squats or any of these? I just don't think it's worth it unless there's some demand in which this is what they're going to be doing. Let's say you have a 60-year-old master's long jumper, then continuing to do plyometrics where they would jump as part of their sport and as part of what the demand is on their body, then I would keep doing that. But with the regular everyday person who's just like, I don't want my back to hurt anymore, I want to stay active, I like to golf once or twice a month, we don't need that. I can have them throw things and vertically toss things and slam things and do other actions that are very dynamic and explosive and get power training without having to leave the ground and necessarily and do vertical jumps. So in the video, he's doing like a full, like as high as he can vertical jump. And then that goes to these little pogos, right? where you're doing little quad pumps and you're just leaving the ground like just enough to get off the floor, but it's or calves only, no quads, no knees. I do like that. I do think there's a good plyometric component to that. Where we start to have issues with older pops is foot and ankle and arch support. With all those repetitive pogos, you can start to aggravate some issues around the feet, the aging body. Typically, the aging feet do have a little bit more demands and limitations on them. So careful with adding those in. You can always stay on the ground and just do dynamic calf pumps where you're getting a good stretch reflex, but they're not literally leaving the ground, right? So all in all, great article. I love it that in the Wall Street Journal, we're getting articles about strength and conditioning. I love it that we're getting a strength and conditioning team and a staff that are showing exercises that they do for their World Series champion, high level, elite level athletes that we're all doing in here in our strength programs and you're doing at home in your strength programs. You can see how inclusive all this is, in that there isn't a pro athlete style of training and an older adult style of training in like, here's list A, list B. You're gonna look at those and go, they're pretty much the same list. We're just gonna modify and change things, and maybe the volumes are definitely gonna change and the tempos are gonna change. But as far as the lifts go, we do clean and jerks, we do snatches, we do clean pulls, we do deadlifts, we do rack pulls, right? We do inverted rows, we do variations of pull-ups, we do variations of push-ups. All stuff that you're seeing at high level athletic programs doing. And then vice versa, right? They're doing mobility training and proper hinging and pickup techniques and things that you would say like, oh, this is in an older adult program, a prehab and a rehab and all the maintenance work, they're doing that as well. And so this is an inclusive strength and conditioning philosophy of how do you train the optimized body? How do you train to be in the best ability as you can? The recipe isn't all that different, okay? It isn't all that different. The foundations of it are all pretty similar, and then we kind of branch into areas of expertise and specialty based on the demands of what they do. But if I had a 65-year-old male or female playing recreational recreational softball, right? I could look at this program and be like, this is great. This is right on what we need. I would add in some lateral tosses. I would work on some contralateral and eccentric loading strength to make sure they can follow through and finish with their swings and not hurt their backs. Remember, in swinging any kind of club or racket or bat or anything like that, the acceleration phase usually isn't all that hard on the body. It's the deceleration phase up to the follow through that really tends to hurt people. So you need to think about how can I create momentum, but also how can I slow that down? And that's where eccentric tempoed lifts in that antagonist action, like the opposite action of what you're going to be doing, right? You want to be able to train, if I'm right-handed swinging a bat, I want to be able to train like long eccentric lat pull downs on my left side to help my lat decelerate my upper body as I'm coming through rotation. I want to be able to do eccentric rotational strengths, right? And be able to develop the core strength to help my torso slow down, because accelerating, getting more powerful, explosive, that's just natural in our athletic endeavors, is like, let me learn to be more aggressive and get after this more. But as you create more momentum and you get more powerful, you're going to have to learn to channel that energy into something. And if that goes into a ball or into a hockey puck or whatever it is that you're slapping at or swinging at, right? That energy is going to go into that implement, but not all of it. There's going to be follow through, and you're going to have to decelerate that at some point. You see a lot of folks, especially in golf, okay, start to hurt their lower back. And it almost always, if you're right-handed, it's your left QL, your left quadratus laborum, that starts to ache as you golf and go through the round, because that's the muscle trying to decelerate you on your follow-through. And as you say, oh man, this is really starting to get tight, you start to swing less with your hips and you start to use your arms more, and then your back starts to wrench down because your arms, your upper body is starting to wrench away. You're too fatigued and you're not conditioned enough to be able to decelerate the implement. Excuse me. These are things you can train for in here. and help you stay strong, maintain your technique and your good swing all the way through. That's why really good athletes you see right now, great golfers, spend a lot of time in the weight room, and they work a lot of contralateral, ipsilateral. They work a lot of agonist, antagonist, supersets. You know, they want to create as much muscular quality as they can. All right, I'll quit rambling. I hope you enjoyed this. Comments, questions, hit me up down below. If not, please continue to fight your good fight against sarcopenia. Please like the channel, subscribe, share with any of your family and friends. Help us grow. We much appreciate it. Much love to all of you, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.